In response to the threat of an oil and LPG supply crisis in Indonesia, resulting from the Iran's partial closure of the Strait of Hormuz amid the war in the Gulf region, the Indonesian government has announced several measures to anticipate the threat. President Prabowo has instructed his administration to implement several programs. There is a 100 gigawatt solar program, including the replacement of diesel power plants with solar power plants and battery energy storage systems. There is also the conversion of around 120 million internal combustion motorcycles into electric motorcycles. There is a 1 day per week work from home, and there's also the acceleration of the 50% biofuel blending, commonly known as the B50. In the press conference on March 31st, 2026, the Coordinating Ministry for Economic Affairs of Indonesia outlined 8 anticipatory measures, including the program that I have mentioned before, as part of the broader effort to create a more efficient and productive national work culture transformation in Indonesia. Other strategies include budget efficiency, particularly for official travel, energy saving directive, and 50 liters per day cap on fuel purchases. The Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, on the other hand, also stated that Indonesia has identified alternative fossil energy supply sources from other countries to secure the supply for Indonesia. And he also added that the country's current fuel and gas reserves remain above the national minimum standard. Then there is also the Minister of Investment and Downstream Industries that said that the government will also accelerate the development of renewable energy, particularly solar and geothermal, to reduce the vulnerability of Indonesia's energy system. We at ISR appreciate the government's response to anticipate the crisis by promoting the energy transition to reduce dependence on fossil fuel, encouraging energy efficiency, and diversifying oil supplies to prevent a more severe supply crisis. There are 2 major directions of Indonesia's national energy plan that I would like to highlight. First, President Prabowo Subianto emphasized that the government is speeding up the production of diesel fuel from crude palm oil and is currently also pushing the study of the production of gasoline from palm oil. In addition to the palm oil-based biofuel, the government is also preparing to develop a coal-based energy through gasification technology and synthetic fuel production. President Prabowo further stated that the agricultural waste would also be utilized as a source of affordable and accessible alternative energy for the public. According to him, this is one of the strategies for energy diversification. The second thing that I would like to highlight, the President also announced a target to develop solar power plants on a massive scale at 100 gigawatt scale within the next 3 years. President further stated that this initiative would be integrated with the conversion of gasoline-powered motorcycles and gas into electric vehicles. Regarding this conversion initiative, President Prabowo noted that it could eliminate Indonesia's dependence on imported fuel and help save foreign exchange reserve. However, regarding these directions, ISR sees that Indonesia's energy crisis stems from fossil fuel debt. The government's proposed palm oil, coal, and biofuel alternatives risk repeating the same market volatility and fiscal risk rather than addressing the root causes. Additionally, while we welcome the ambitious 100 gigawatt solar target and the EP push as a positive political signals, we think that the aggressive short time period 3-year timeline presents several technical and also institutional hurdles. That is why we recommend focus on a systematic renewable energy expansion that involves cross-sectoral electrification instead.
In response to disruption in global energy market, the Vietnam government has directed the implementation of various measures through a series of the policy documents aimed at strengthening energy security and ensuring supply continuity. As an immediate response to the escalation of the tension in the Middle East, the Prime Minister established a national task force on energy security. to monitor potential supply risk and strengthen coordination among relevant ministries and state-owned enterprise to safeguard energy supply security. At the same time, the government also introduced urgent measures to stabilize domestic energy supply and ensure uninterrupted fuel availability for the industry, transport, and household. Beyond short-term response measures, the government also promoted the longer-term action to strengthen energy security, including improving energy efficiency, reducing dependency on the imported fossil fuel, and encourage the electrical vehicles. Vietnam's national energy planning is evolving toward a security-oriented approach, integrating energy security and system reliability alongside decarbonization objectives. The key priority including strengthening energy security, diversifying energy sources, and encouraging development renewable energy through the improved grid infrastructure and energy storage system. The overall Vietnam aims to achieve a balanced energy transition that supports energy security, economic growth, and sustainability.
First, I'd like to add some context. You see, the Philippines, I think, relative to other countries in the ASEAN, we are the most dependent on imported energy. And our power sector is dependent on imported coal and LNG, around 70%, I would say. And in our transport sector, we are probably 95% dependent on oil. So we are very import dependent, and the impact of the crisis has mostly affected our transport sector. Now, our president declared Executive Order number 110, which declared a national emergency to enable coordinated actions across the various sectors affected by these oil price and electricity price movements during the crisis.
EO110 created an interagency approach wherein concerned government agencies work together to deliver coordinated national response and targeted support. This is under the Unified Package for Livelihood, Industry, Food and Transport or UPLIFT Committee. What has the UPLIFT Committee done under EO110? First, it explored sources of oil and gas other than from Middle East countries. It initiated government procurement of fuel and coordinated closely with industry in the monitoring of inventory and supply. Second, in the power market, the Department of Energy or DOE and the Energy Regulatory Commission or ERC issued their respective guidelines on the full and efficient utilization where feasible of RE and indigenous resources to manage costs and ensure supply. Both agencies accelerated RE and storage projects in the pipeline, optimizing dispatch and maximizing indigenous energy resource. Third, for consumer protection, DOE instituted continuous monitoring of fuel price adjustments and conducting nationwide gas stations inspections and promoting fair and transparent practices. Fourth, subsidies for fuel were given to public transport to cushion the impact of the oil price hike to limit the increase in transport fares. Lastly, energy conservation efforts were widely promoted through the conduct of energy audits, especially in government-owned buildings, and encourage more efficient energy use across sectors.
I would say that most of our efforts are to manage the price volatility, to secure supply, and to secure that our population is reminded on energy efficiency and energy conservation. Now, I think that there are certain elements in our power contracting that are probably not there in other ASEAN countries. We have automatic fuel price pass-through. In other words, If the international prices increase automatically the following month, it is reflected in consumer bills. So the impact has been practically immediate for our population. And that is why the President thought it best to declare Executive Order number 110 to coordinate all government efforts and to give proper information to our population.
The direction of the national leadership in response to the crisis is to strengthen energy security and resilience.
We have been reminded once more about our vulnerability to international oil and other energy price movements and a potential disruption of our supply. So I suppose that moving forward, we will strengthen current efforts to increase renewable energy in our power mix.
This translates in the power sector in developing indigenous sources, especially RE, and calls for the hastening of the implementation of projects that are already in the pipeline. The implementation of green energy auctions being fast-tracked and new technologies are being explored. This is complemented by the smart and green plan to accommodate the incoming RE and other generation projects. The long-term view involves the inclusion of nuclear power plant in the power mix.
In the power grid, we are seeing the need to further expand, make our grid more distributed and have more flexible capacity. We are also looking at energy storage opportunities in the grid and in our commercial industrial sectors.
In the transport sector, the initiative is to encourage the wide adoption of EVs, both for the private and public sectors, and the deployment of charging stations nationwide.
We are seeing certain developments in our transport sector moving towards certain electrification options for commuter transport. And I see a lot more electric vehicles on the road in Metro Manila.
As to the oil and gas sector, the DOE is already exploring partnerships with other countries and development agencies for exploring diverse sources of oil and gas and in the building and development of new stockpiling systems. All these are anchored in the development of global expertise to make things happen.
So I think what this crisis has given us is another opportunity to take another look at those parts of our energy and power sectors that are most vulnerable to international price volatilities and disruption. And all of this, I think, points to the need for a more holistic program transitioning to more indigenous energy sources and transitioning to more detailed programs for those sectors that I've mentioned, particularly in power generation and in transport.